Hello everyone and welcome again to another special edition of the Charlie Curvada Show, where we are bringing you healthy recipes from the kitchen of Charlie Curvada. This is all for the foodies out there who love food like I do but want to be healthy. So today's recipe is going to be the Quinoa Scramble, and this is a recipe that you can put your own spin on however you like. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and then I'll show you where we can do slight variations on the recipe and you can customize it and make it your own. So what I've started with on the stove right now I have boiling is 1 cup of water and a ½ cup of quinoa. And if you're not familiar with what quinoa is, I highly suggest that you go to, I believe it's whfoods.com, and look up quinoa, and it's spelled Q-U-I-N-O-A. It's a grain that I've started to incorporate in a lot of my daily meals. It's considered a perfect protein, lots and lots of health benefits, lots of nutritional benefits, high in protein, high in all the nutrients that your body needs to make it through the day. It's got good carbs, so it's a natural boost of energy. I love it because it's got a nice nutty flavor to it, and it really just kind of gives a little extra oomph to the meal. So what we're doing is we're going to boil the water down from the quinoa, and while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and finish prepping. The recipe calls for 1 eggs to every cup of quinoa that you're going to put in there. So when our ½ cup quinoa boils, it's going to become a full cup of quinoa. So I'm going to use 12 eggs, and the way I'm breaking this down is I'm using 9 egg whites and 3 whole eggs, which is why you're going to see egg yolks in here. I don't have an egg separator. I'm a cheap Mexican, so this is my egg separator here. I'm going to crack the shell and pull the egg whites out and bounce the yolk from shell to shell and just let the egg white fall into the dish, and then discard the yolk. And then this will make my 3rd whole egg. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to beat these together so that they're nice and blended and fluffy. I don't like any separation between my egg whites and my egg yolks. When I do this, I like getting a lot of air in the eggs, making it nice and fluffy, almost like omelet status. So there we have our eggs. While those are setting and the quinoa is finishing, we're going to use a ½ onion. So when the recipe calls for a cup of quinoa cooked and 12 eggs, you're going to use a ½ onion. So if you're going to make a double batch, you use a whole onion. And you're going to chop it. And since I'm always pressed for time, I'm going to use my food processor and completely cheat. Run this down the middle here. Then we're going to peel the top layer off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into smaller pieces so my food processor doesn't die of a heart attack. These little pieces of skin out. Distribute it evenly. Put that mess in there. Put a lid on it. And I'm just going to let it go until I see all the onion is chopped down. So usually once I see that there's no more activity going on in the middle, I know I've got it where I want it. It should be about that fine. If you're going to chop it yourself, you can make it a little chunkier. But that's what we're going to do. So you'll see over here I've got some sausage. It's Idell's chicken, Gouda, and apple sausage. Low in fat, low in calories, completely delicious. It's not going to give you the same downfalls as pork sausage would. And I think it's a little bit better than turkey sausage. So that's Idell's. I got fresh baby spinach. I got some 4-cheese blend Mexican style spreaded cheddar cheese. And we're just going to go to town. So we're going to get started on this. Check on my quinoa. So all I'm doing is letting the water boil out of this. I'm not going to cover it, I'm not going to steam it, I'm just going to let the water boil down. Some organic extra virgin olive oil. And I'm just going to throw a little bit in there, enough that I know that the onion is going to absorb it and coat the bottom of the pan, but I don't want too much oil in there because I don't want it to take away from the flavor. And I also don't want to add any unnecessary fat and calories to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting my heat on about medium-high, because we're working with egg whites. If your heat is too high, you'll burn them and dry them out. And I'm not a fan of burnt, dry eggs. So I'm going to take my onion, and that's going to go down in the pan. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and start stirring that around so that the onion gets coated with the olive oil and the pan gets coated with both. And you'll hear it start to sizzle in about a half second. There's a progression in how things are supposed to be put in the pan when we make the scramble. The eggs and the cheese are the absolute last thing to go in there. So what we want to do is we're going to saute the onions until they turn a little clear. So it'll probably be about 30 seconds to a minute before we add our next ingredient. Because as we're adding ingredients, the onions will continue to saute for a total of probably about 3 to 4 minutes. Now I want you to take a look at the quinoa. We've successfully boiled the water out of it. There's just a little bit left, and that's going to run off in steam. So we're just going to let that sit there, and we're going to let the rest of the water steam out. Now see, we got a nice little sizzle going on this pan over here. The combination of the olive oil and the onion just emanating from this pan are amazing. So I'm going to stir that around a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my sausage. You can use turkey sausage, you can use turkey bacon, you can use whatever kind of meat that you like in this particular scramble. But because I want to get a nice crunchy texture on the outside, a little bit crispy, this is going to be the first to go in. And I'm going to let that soak up a little bit of the olive oil and blend with the flavor of the onion. And we're going to saute that for a little bit. And because this has cheese in it, the cheese is going to start to melt out just a little bit, which is fine. So we'll let those just kind of sit there. And I'm going to grab some of my foreign baby spinach that I get from Costco. Some people are really weird about their spinach. I usually buy the stuff that's already been triple rinsed, but we're just going to grab a handful and throw it in some cold water for good measure. Check on this. So the next ingredient to go in is going to be the quinoa. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to put a little bit of a saute on the quinoa as well. It's kind of like when you make fried rice. The rice is already cooked, but when you go to fry it, it puts a different spin on the rice. So we're going to get all those flavors going together, and we're going to let the quinoa kind of get a little more firm and finish cooking up. And I can already smell the onion and the sausage starting to come together. So while we're doing that, I'm going to grab some spinach real quick and give it a rinse. And I like to grab a good sized handful because remember with spinach, when it cooks down, you lose a lot of the size. So this may look like a lot now, but when it's done cooking down, it'll be a different story. So just give that a quick rinse for good measure, and that's going down in the pan. All these different colors and textures and flavors going on in here. Sometimes I like to add tomato and bell pepper. You can basically do any variation on this. If you like omelets, rather than doing an omelet, you can do the quinoa scramble, and it's going to add some good healthy carbs to your breakfast in the morning, and it packs a protein punch. So this is amazing, amazing fuel food. See how the spinach is kind of just cooking down just a little bit. I'm only going to let it cook down until it's just starting to wilt, because I want it to maintain some of the nutrients and some of its original texture, because it's delicious. So now that we've got it to about where I want it to be, I'm going to give my eggs a real quick fluffing, and then I'm just going to drop them. I'm going to check my heat level to make sure I'm not going to burn my eggs, because I don't want them cooking too fast, but because there's a lot of different ingredients in here too, I don't want them cooking too slow. So about medium-high heat, and all I do is just fold them in, because I like my eggs to be nice and thick and fluffy, kind of like me. So we're just going to continue to fold that from the outside in. And you'll see how the eggs will start to kind of congeal around the quinoa, and the ingredients spread evenly. It might look a hot mess right now, but this smells delicious. So I'm going to wait until my eggs are just about cooked, and you'll see they start to kind of look like grits a little bit, where the uncooked eggs mixed with the quinoa. A correct quinoa scramble, your eggs will look like eggs. So if they're still looking a little bit like grits, then you want to keep cooking. Alright. So now what I'm going to do, because the eggs are almost completely cooked, this is the time I'm going to add my cheese. And this is the only real no-no in the dish, but I use it to hold the eggs together and to give it just a little bit of flavor. Mozzarella cheese is preferable. It's lower in saturated fat per serving, but this is what I have available, and it goes really well with the sausage. So I'm just going to take a couple of handfuls, because this is all going to even out when I disperse it in the serving, so it'll only turn into about an ounce or two per serving. So now all I'm going to do is just fold the eggs and the cheese, and you can see it's starting to come off the pan a little bit easier here. I'm going to continue to turn them, make sure I don't have any runny spots in here. This also makes an excellent filling if you want a pita pocket, if you want a breakfast pita. This makes an excellent breakfast pita pocket filling. So it looks like we are done. And I don't want to overcook the eggs, because once I turn the pan off, the pan's still hot, so the eggs are going to continue to cook. So what I'm going to do is spread everything out. As soon as I shut the pan off, you'll see the steam pop. So now all the moisture is going to come out, and everything on the bottom is going to finish cooking. The cheese is going to congeal. Everything is going to come together, and it's going to be amazing. So again, you can turn this recipe into whatever you want. You can add whatever other proteins you want to it, any other vegetables. You can add more onion if you like more flavor. You can do more eggs. You can do more quinoa. It's really up to you. This is the basic recipe. It's a great, great energy boost. Recovery food for after a workout. Serving size is about 1 cup, so let's keep it simple, everything in moderation. Hope you guys enjoy it.